Julian Hayes sat alone at table 12, watching couples dance under the crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom. His cousin's wedding reception buzzed with laughter and champagne toasts, but he felt like a ghost among the living. 3 years since Melissa died, and weddings still felt like walking through broken glass. He sipped his chamomile tea, the only guest not drinking alcohol, and tried to remember why he'd agreed to come. The ballroom was decorated in soft whites and silvers, with tall centerpieces of roses and baby's breath on every table. Julian had funded half the wedding as a gift, though his cousin didn't know that. He preferred his generosity quiet, unlike the loud declarations of wealth that filled his business world. At 38, he'd built a tech empire that changed how hospitals tracked patient care, but none of his money could save Melissa from the cancer that took her in just 8 months. He set down his teacup when 3 identical little girls appeared at his table. They wore matching red dresses with white ribbons in their curly hair. Triplets, he realized. They couldn't be more than 7 years old. They stood in a row, studying him with serious brown eyes that seemed too old for their faces. The girl in the middle spoke first. "Are you rich?" Julian blinked. Children usually asked if he had games on his phone or why he wore fancy clothes. That's a direct question. Mama says direct questions get direct answers, the girl on the left said. "Our mama coordinates this whole wedding," the third girl added, gesturing around the ballroom. "She makes everything beautiful. She's the most beautiful too. And the smartest." Julian found himself smiling for the first time that evening. "Your mother sounds remarkable." "She is," the middle girl said. "I'm Gabrielle. This is Brianna and Destiny. We need your help with something important." "What kind of help?" Julian asked, intrigued despite himself. Gabrielle leaned in close, and her sisters followed. "We need you to pretend to be our father." The request hit Julian like cold water. He looked around the ballroom, searching for their parents, for someone who might explain this bizarre situation. "Where's your actual father?" "He's here somewhere," Brianna said, her voice tight. "With his new girlfriend. She's mean and fake. She pretends to like us when he's watching." "He doesn't come to our school stuff," Destiny whispered. "He forgot Gabrielle's birthday last month. He only remembers we exist when his girlfriend reminds him." Gabrielle's eyes were fierce. "But if he thinks another man wants to be our dad, maybe he'll remember he already has that job. Maybe he'll try harder." Julian's chest tightened. These children were scheming to manipulate their own father into loving them. What kind of man made his daughters resort to such plans? That's a complicated situation for someone so young to handle. "We're not that young," Brianna said. "We're 7.5. And we're smart. Mama says we get our brains from her." "But we need help," Gabrielle admitted. "You look nice. And rich. And lonely. We saw you sitting here by yourself while everyone else dances. Do you have kids?" "I don't," Julian said softly. The words always hurt. He and Melissa had planned for children. They picked out names and paint colors for nurseries. Then she got sick and all those plans dissolved like sugar in rain. "Then maybe you're lonely for some," Destiny said. "And we're lonely for a dad who cares. We could help each other." The logic was sound in the way only children's logic could be, cutting through complications to simple truths. Julian should say no. He should find their mother and explain the situation. He should walk away from this table and these 3 girls with their big eyes and bigger problems. Instead, he found himself asking, what would this pretending involve? The girls' faces lit up. Gabrielle pulled out a small notepad from her dress pocket. "We made a list. You need to sit with us at dinner. Hold Mama's hand sometimes. Act like you know us really well. Maybe call us honey or sweetie or princess, things dads say. And you have to dance with Mama," Brianna added. "A slow dance. Our real dad never danced with her. He said dancing was boring." "Talk to us about school and stuff," Destiny said. "Ask about our day. Regular dad things." Julian looked at their hopeful faces and felt something crack open in his chest. When was the last time someone needed him for something that mattered? His company needed his decisions. His board needed his vision. But these girls needed something more basic. They needed to feel valuable enough to fight for. "All right," he said and watched their eyes go wide. "I'll help you. But we need rules. No lying beyond the pretending. If your mother asks me direct questions, I answer truthfully. And if your father gets upset, we stop immediately. I won't cause real problems for your family." "Deal," Gabrielle said, sticking out her small hand. Julian shook it solemnly, then shook hands with each sister. "One more thing," he said. "Why me? There are plenty of men at this wedding." The girls exchanged looks. Finally Destiny said, You're drinking tea instead of wine. Mama says people who choose tea at parties usually have good reasons. And good reasons mean good character. Before Julian could respond, a woman's voice cut through the music. Girls, what are you doing? Julian looked up and felt his breath catch. The woman walking toward them was stunning. She wore a green dress that moved like water, and her natural curls framed a face of warm brown skin and sharp, intelligent eyes. This had to be their mother. The resemblance was unmistakable in the girls' smiles and the determined set of their jaws. Mama, Gabrielle said brightly. We made a new friend. The woman's eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. Her daughters clustered around a strange man at his table. Girls, you know better than to bother guests. I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes. Julian Hayes. He stood, offering his hand. And they're not bothering me at all. We were just talking. She shook his hand briefly, her touch professional but warm. Renee Thompson. I'm the event coordinator for this wedding. And the mother of these 3 troublemakers. We're not troublemakers, Brianna protested. We're entrepreneurs. You said so yourself. Renee's lips twitched. I said you were entrepreneurial in spirit. There's a difference. She turned back to Julian. Thank you for being kind to them. I hope they didn't ask you for anything inappropriate. The girls looked at Julian with pleading eyes. He thought about Melissa, about the children they'd never have, about going home to his empty mansion and his empty life. He thought about these 3 girls who loved their mother enough to scheme and their father little enough to need schemes. Actually, Julian said, they invited me to join your table for dinner. If that's all right with you, of course. Renee's eyes widened slightly. She looked at her daughters, who nodded eagerly, then back at Julian. You don't have to do that. I'm sure you have your own table assignment. I'm alone at table 12, Julian said. And your daughters are excellent company. Better than the empty chairs around me, certainly. Something shifted in Renee's expression. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of another lonely person in a room full of couples. Well, if you're sure. Our table is 8. The girls would certainly enjoy having someone new to talk to. It's settled then, Julian said. He gathered his tea and followed Renee and the triplets across the ballroom. The girls walked between them, occasionally looking back at Julian with conspiratorial smiles. As they reached table 8, Renee pulled out a chair for herself, and Julian helped Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny into their seats before taking the empty chair next to Renee. Across the ballroom, he noticed a well-dressed black man watching them with narrowed eyes. The man stood with a thin woman who was young enough to be his daughter. That's him, Destiny whispered to Julian. That's our dad. Julian met Anthony Mitchell's stare and didn't look away. He'd agreed to help these girls, and whatever came next, he'd see it through. Renee noticed the exchange and stiffened. Girls, what's going on? Before anyone could answer, Gabrielle reached across the table and took Julian's hand. Mama, can Mr. Julian dance with you? Please? He said he loves dancing and you never get to dance at weddings because you're always working. Julian felt the trap close around him, simple and effective. Renee looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Julian, confusion and something else, something softer in her eyes. I would be honored, Julian said quietly, if you'd dance with me. The music shifted to a slow song. Renee studied him for a long moment, and Julian saw the exact second she made her decision. She stood, smoothed her green dress and offered him her hand. One dance, she said. Then you're going to tell me what my daughters roped you into. As Julian led Renee onto the dance floor, he realized he'd just agreed to the most complicated, potentially disastrous good deed of his life. But when he put his hand on Renee's waist and saw the triplets watching with matching smiles, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Sometimes the best decisions feel like the worst ideas. And sometimes, Julian thought as Renee relaxed slightly in his arms, the best love stories start with a whispered conspiracy and 3 little matchmakers who refuse to give up on getting the family they deserve. Have you ever watched children fight for the love they deserve? These triplets just took matters into their own hands with a billionaire stranger. What do you think will happen when their real father finds out? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this emotional story of second chances and found family. The dance ended too quickly. Julian walked Renee back to table 8, where the triplets waited with barely contained excitement. Other guests were heading to the buffet line, giving them a moment of relative privacy. Renee sat down, folded her hands on the white tablecloth, and looked at her daughters with that expression mothers perfect over years of discovering secrets. All right. Someone needs to explain what's happening right now. Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny looked at each other, then at Julian. He could see the calculation in their young faces. Who would be the better spokesperson? Who could sell their plan most effectively? We asked Mr. Julian to pretend to be our dad, Gabrielle finally said. Just for tonight. Just so Dad would see that someone else thinks we're worth spending time with. Renee's eyes closed briefly. When she opened them, Julian saw pain there, deep and old. Girls, you can't manipulate people like that. You can't ask a stranger to lie for you. But he's not really a stranger anymore, Brianna argued. We know his name. We know he's nice. And he agreed to help us. Which makes him either very kind or very foolish, Renee said. She turned to Julian. I'm sorry they put you in this position. You don't have to feel obligated to continue whatever story they've spun. Julian could have walked away then. Should have, probably. Instead, he said, they didn't manipulate me. They asked for help. There's a difference. Is there? Renee's voice was sharp with the kind of hurt that comes from being let down too many times. You're a wealthy man, Mr. Hayes. I recognize your name from the business section. Founder and CEO of Hayes Medical Technologies. Worth several billion if the estimates are accurate. What could you possibly gain from pretending to be involved with my family? The question was fair. Julian considered his answer carefully. Your ex-husband is here tonight with another woman. Your daughters are old enough to understand what that means but young enough to think they can fix it with a plan. They're desperate enough to approach a stranger, which tells me their father hasn't been present in their lives for quite some time. Am I wrong? Renee's jaw tightened. No, you're not wrong. Then what I gain is helping 3 smart girls who deserve better than being ignored by the man who should love them most. Julian's voice was quiet but firm. And perhaps helping their mother, who clearly carries the weight of their disappointment along with her own. Tears welled in Renee's eyes, but she blinked them back. You don't know anything about our situation. Then tell me, Julian said. Destiny tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mama, please. Just for tonight. Dad barely looks at us when we visit him. But he was staring so hard when you danced with Mr. Julian. Maybe if he thinks he might lose us, he'll remember we're worth keeping. The logic was heartbreaking. Renee looked at each of her daughters, and Julian saw the war playing out on her face. Pride versus pragmatism. Protection versus hope. Anthony and I divorced 2 years ago, Renee said finally, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. He's a successful attorney. Makes good money. Pays his child support on time. But he sees the girls maybe once a month, and even then, it's usually at his mother's house while he catches up on work in another room. Since he started dating Yvette 6 months ago, the visits became even less frequent. That must be difficult, Julian said. It's devastating, Renee admitted. Not for me. I stopped loving Anthony years before the divorce. But watching my daughters wait by the window on Saturdays, watching them make excuses for why he canceled again, watching them blame themselves, that's the kind of pain no mother should have to witness. Gabrielle reached for her mother's hand. We don't blame ourselves anymore, Mama. We know Dad's just broken in some way. But maybe if he sees us happy with someone else, he'll want to fix himself. The sophistication of that analysis from a 7-year-old made Julian's heart ache. Your daughters are remarkably perceptive. They have to be, Renee said softly. I work long hours to build my business. They've learned to read situations and people because they spend a lot of time in adult spaces, helping me set up events, watching me navigate difficult clients. They're my little assistants and my best friends. We're a team, Brianna said proudly. Julian made his decision. Then let me help the team. Tonight only if that's what you prefer. Or at future events if you think it might actually make a difference. I'm recently widowed. I understand loneliness. And I have more than enough resources to support whatever you decide. I don't want your money, Renee said quickly. I'm not offering money, Julian corrected. I'm offering time, attention, presence, the things your daughters need and aren't getting from their father. Renee studied him for a long moment. Julian let her look, let her assess and judge. He had nothing to hide. His life was public record, his success documented, his character references impeccable. More importantly, he meant what he said. The girls had touched something in him that had been dormant since Melissa died. Why would you do this? Renee asked. Really? Not the kind answer you give to make me feel better. The true reason. Julian appreciated the directness. Because my wife and I planned to have children. We picked names. Designed nurseries. Talked about what kind of parents we'd be. Then she got sick and within a year all those plans were gone. I have a house full of empty rooms and a life full of business meetings. When your daughters approached me, I saw a chance to be useful to someone in a way that matters. Does that make sense? Yes, Renee said quietly. It makes perfect sense. So you'll let him help? Destiny asked hopefully. Renee looked at the buffet line where Anthony and Yvette were loading plates. She looked at her daughters, at their eager faces and crossed fingers. She looked at Julian and seemed to be measuring something about him that had nothing to do with money or status. Ground rules, she said finally. If we do this, we do it carefully. First, no lying to the girls. They need to understand this is pretend, a way to help their father see what he's missing, not a replacement for him. Agreed, Julian said. Second, we maintain professional boundaries. I don't know you, Mr. Hayes. You seem kind, but kind people can still have bad intentions. The girls are never alone with you. I'm present for every interaction until I trust you completely. Absolutely, Julian said. That's just good parenting. Third, if at any point this becomes uncomfortable or complicated, we stop. No guilt. No obligations. Clean break. Julian nodded. Fair terms. And fourth, Renee said, her voice softening, you accept my help with something in return. I won't be a charity case. If you're giving us your time and presence, I want to give you something equally valuable. Your company is valuable, Julian said. Renee smiled. Nice try. But I'm serious. I coordinate events for a living. Galas, fundraisers, corporate parties. If you need someone to plan something, I'm your person. If you need advice on color schemes or caterers or venues, I'll give you my professional opinion free of charge. Deal? Julian considered. He did have a company gala coming up in 3 months. His assistant had been bugging him about finalizing details, and he'd been putting it off because the whole thing seemed tedious. Deal. I have an annual company gala in September. 500 guests, medical professionals and tech investors. Can you handle something that size? I just coordinated a wedding for 300, Renee said. 500 is ambitious, but I can do it. You'll pay my standard rate for the work itself, but the planning consultations and advice are free. And if you need a date for the event. She glanced at her daughters. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. It's a deal, Julian said, offering his hand. Renee shook it, her grip firm and professional. The triplets cheered quietly. Gabrielle pulled out her notepad again. Okay, so Mr. Julian needs to know some things about us. Our favorite colors, our hobbies, stuff like that. So when people ask, he can answer like a real dad. Julian pulled out his phone. I'll take notes. Tell me everything. For the next 20 minutes, the girls filled him in on their lives. Gabrielle loved science and wanted to be a doctor. Brianna was artistic and drew constantly. Destiny adored animals and volunteered at a local shelter on weekends. They all took dance classes, hated Brussels sprouts, and had a cat named Professor Whiskers. Renee added details when the girls forgot things. Their school was Lincoln Elementary. Their teacher was Mrs. Patterson. Their grandparents, Margaret and Bernard Thompson, lived 15 minutes away and helped with childcare when Renee had evening events. Julian absorbed it all, asking questions, making connections. By the time the main course arrived, he could recite their schedules and preferences like he'd known them for months instead of an hour. Anthony Mitchell approached their table just as dessert was being served. He was tall, well-dressed, with the confident posture of someone who won arguments for a living. Yvette clung to his arm, young and blonde and bored. Renee, Anthony said coolly. Girls. Daddy, the triplets said in unison, their voices noticeably less enthusiastic than when they'd greeted Julian. Anthony's eyes locked on Julian. I don't believe we've met. Anthony Mitchell. Julian stood, offering his hand. Julian Hayes. Friend of the family. Interesting, Anthony said, his handshake just slightly too firm. The girls have never mentioned you. We just met him, Gabrielle said truthfully. But he's really nice. Nicer than some people, Brianna added, looking pointedly at Yvette. Anthony's jaw tightened. Renee, can I speak with you privately? Whatever you need to say you can say here, Renee replied, her voice steady. Fine. Anthony's voice dropped. I don't appreciate my daughters being paraded in front of strangers. Whatever game you're playing, it stops now. Julian felt anger rise in his chest, but Renee beat him to the response. The only game being played is the one where you pretend to care about your daughters once a month. Julian has shown more interest in their lives in 1 hour than you have in 6 months. So maybe examine your own behavior before criticizing mine. The surrounding tables had gone quiet. Anthony noticed and forced a smile. We'll discuss this later. Girls, I'll see you next weekend. No you won't, Destiny said softly. You'll cancel. You always do. The truth hit Anthony like a physical blow. Julian saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his eyes widened slightly. But instead of apologizing or promising to do better, Anthony turned and walked away, Yvette tottering after him on high heels. The triplets looked sad but not surprised. Renee pulled them close, one by one, kissing the tops of their heads. You girls did nothing wrong. Your father's issues are his own. We know, Mama, Gabrielle said. But her voice was small and hurt. Julian sat down and pushed his untouched chocolate cake toward the center of the table. I have a proposal. This cake is meant to be shared. So let's share it and then let's go look at the photo booth. I saw it has funny props and I think we need some laughter right about now. The girls brightened. Renee met Julian's eyes over their heads, and the gratitude there was so raw it made his chest tighten. They shared the cake, made silly faces in the photo booth, and when the wedding ended, Julian walked them to Renee's car. The triplets hugged him goodnight, each embraced tight and trusting in a way that felt like a sacred responsibility. Thank you, Renee said as she buckled the girls into their car seats. For tonight. For being kind when you didn't have to be. It was my pleasure, Julian said honestly. And I meant what I said about helping. Call me when you're ready to discuss the gala. Or if you just need someone to show up at a school event. Whatever you need. Renee handed him her business card. I'll call you tomorrow. We should set up clear expectations before this goes any further. Smart, Julian said. You're protecting them. I respect that. I'm protecting all of us, Renee said. Because despite my better judgment, I think I'm going to trust you with something precious. Don't make me regret it. I won't, Julian promised. He watched them drive away, three little faces pressed against the back window, waving until the car turned the corner. Then he walked to his own vehicle, a sleek black sedan that suddenly felt too empty. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for making Mama smile. She doesn't smile much anymore. Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny. Julian saved the number and replied. Thank you for trusting me with your family. Sleep well, girls. As he drove home to his mansion on the hill, Julian felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Purpose. Hope. The sense that maybe, just maybe, broken things could find ways to fit together and create something whole. Renee called Julian 3 days later. He was in his home office, reviewing quarterly reports, when his phone lit up with her number. He'd been waiting, hoping she would reach out, trying not to seem too eager. Julian Hayes, he answered. It's Renee Thompson. Do you have a moment to talk? For you, absolutely. He closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. I've been thinking about your offer, Renee said. The girls haven't stopped talking about you. They want to know when they'll see you again. And honestly, I've been researching you. Julian smiled. Find anything interesting? You're exactly who you said you were. No scandals. No secret families. No lawsuits beyond standard corporate stuff. Your late wife, Melissa, was a pediatric oncologist. You donated the new children's wing at Memorial Hospital in her name. Your employees speak highly of you in online reviews. You're either genuinely good or remarkably skilled at hiding your flaws. I have flaws, Julian said. I work too much. I'm terrible at remembering to eat when I'm focused on a project. I get obsessive about details. But I'm not hiding anything sinister, if that's what concerns you. It does, Renee admitted. But my gut says you're safe. And my gut is usually right. So I'm calling to take you up on your offer with some modifications. I'm listening. The girls have a school play in 2 weeks. The Lion King Jr. Gabrielle is Nala, Brianna designed the sets, and Destiny is in charge of animal sounds. It's a big deal for them. Their father won't be there. He never is. Julian grabbed a pen. What night? Friday at 7. But before that, I'd like you to come to my house this weekend. Spend some time with the girls in a normal setting. Let them get to know you when there's no agenda, no audience. Just you and us. A trial run, Julian said. Exactly. If it feels forced or awkward, we call it off. If it feels natural, we keep going. Fair? More than fair. Saturday or Sunday? Saturday if you're free. Come around 10. We usually have a late breakfast, then the girls do their weekend activities. You can see what a typical day looks like for us. Julian checked his calendar, knowing full well it was empty. I'm free. Can I bring anything? Just yourself. And maybe a willingness to be humble. The girls are planning to teach you their dance routine. It involves a lot of hip shaking and arm waving. They're very serious about it. Julian laughed. I'll do my best. Send me your address. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Julian drove to Renee's neighborhood, a middle-class area with neat lawns and sidewalk chalk drawings. Her house was a cheerful yellow two-story with blue shutters and a porch swing. Completely different from his modern glass and steel mansion, but infinitely more welcoming. He rang the doorbell. The triplets answered together, wearing matching blue jeans and different colored t-shirts. Red for Gabrielle, green for Brianna, maroon for Destiny. "You came," Destiny said, beaming. "Of course I came," Julian said. "I promised, didn't I?" They led him inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Family photos covered the walls, documenting the girls' lives from babies to now. Julian noticed the absence of Anthony in recent pictures. The narrative told itself visually, a family that had edited out a member. Renee appeared from the kitchen, wearing jeans and a blue blouse, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger, more relaxed than at the wedding. "Welcome to the chaos. Fair warning, we're loud and messy and completely unfiltered here." "Sounds perfect," Julian said. Breakfast was pancakes, fruit, and easy conversation. The girls talked over each other, sharing stories from school, debating which superhero would win in various fights, asking Julian questions about his house and his work. He answered honestly, editing out the loneliness but not the facts. After breakfast, Gabrielle pulled out a chemistry set. "Mama got us this for our birthday. Want to help us make a volcano?" Julian spent the next hour on the kitchen floor, mixing baking soda and vinegar, watching the girls shriek with delight as foam erupted from their papier-mâché mountain. Renee supervised from the counter, occasionally tossing in comments or warnings about protecting the floor. Then Brianna wanted to show him her art portfolio. They sat on the couch while she explained each drawing, the stories behind them, the techniques she was learning. Julian asked questions, genuinely interested, and Brianna glowed under the attention. Destiny's turn came next. She showed him videos on her tablet of animals at the shelter where she volunteered. "This is Biscuit. He's a three-legged dog. Nobody wants him because he's different. But I think different is good. Different means special." "I agree completely," Julian said. "Different is always more interesting than ordinary." Lunch was simple sandwiches, eaten in the backyard while Professor Whiskers, a large orange tabby, supervised from his sunny spot on the patio. The girls taught Julian their dance routine, a combination of moves from various pop songs. He gamely followed along, stumbling over steps, making them laugh when he spun the wrong direction. Renee watched from the porch swing, and when Julian caught her eye, she was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile that reached her eyes and softened her whole face. After the dance lesson, the girls settled in the living room with books for their mandatory afternoon reading time. Julian sat with Renee on the porch swing, both of them holding glasses of lemonade. "You're good with them," Renee said quietly. "They make it easy," Julian replied. "They're smart and funny and kind. You've raised them well." "I've tried. It's not always enough. Sometimes I worry that growing up without a present father will damage them in ways I can't fix. They seem remarkably well adjusted. They're resilient. But resilience shouldn't be necessary at 7 years old, you know? They should feel secure. Confident that the adults in their lives will show up." Julian set down his lemonade. "Can I tell you something about my childhood?" Renee nodded. "My father was present but absent. He was there physically at dinner every night at some school events. But emotionally he was checked out. Too focused on his business, too busy building wealth to build relationships. My mother tried to compensate, but one parent can't fill two roles." "I'm sorry," Renee said. "Don't be. I'm telling you this because despite that, I turned out okay. Better than okay. I built something meaningful. Found love with Melissa. Created a life I'm proud of. Your daughters have something I didn't have. A parent who's fully present, who loves them fiercely, who teaches them their worth. That's more valuable than having two mediocre parents." Renee's eyes glistened. "Thank you for saying that. It's true. And for what it's worth, I'd like to keep coming around. Not as a replacement for Anthony, but as a supplement. Someone who shows up because he wants to, not because he has to. The girls would love that." "What about you?" Julian asked. "What would you love?" The question hung between them. Renee looked at him, really looked, and Julian saw the moment she decided to be honest. "I'd love to not carry everything alone. I'd love to have someone reliable in our lives. Someone the girls can count on. Someone who..." She paused. "Someone who sees me as more than a mother. Who remembers I'm a person with dreams and fears and desires beyond what's best for my children." "I see you," Julian said quietly. Renee Thompson, brilliant event coordinator. Woman who chooses tea people at parties because it shows character. Mother who taught her daughters to be direct and brave. Person who deserves support and partnership and respect. Renee's breath caught. You barely know me. I know enough, and I'd like to know more. If you'll let me. Before Renee could respond, the front door burst open. Gabrielle stood there, book in hand. Mr. Julian, can you read to us? Mama does voices for all the characters and we want to hear your voices. Julian stood, offering his hand to Renee. Shall we? They spent the rest of the afternoon reading, with Julian attempting various character voices that made the girls giggle. When dinner time approached, Renee ordered pizza and insisted Julian stay. Over pepperoni and cheese, Destiny asked, Are you going to come to our play? Absolutely, Julian said. I already put it on my calendar. And you'll sit with Mama? Brianna asked. If your mama wants me to, Julian said, glancing at Renee. I'd like that, Renee said. After dinner, Julian helped clean up. He washed dishes while Renee dried, the two of them moving around the kitchen in comfortable rhythm. The girls watched a movie in the living room, their laughter drifting back to the kitchen. This was a good day, Renee said. The best I've had in 3 years, Julian admitted. Your family is special, Renee. Thank you for letting me be part of it, even temporarily. What if it's not temporary? Renee asked. What if this becomes something real? Julian set down the dish he was washing and turned to face her. Then I'd count myself incredibly fortunate. But I want to do this right. No rushing. No pressure. Just honest steps forward. Renee nodded. Honest steps forward. I can work with that. When it was time to leave, the girls hugged Julian goodnight again. This time, the embraces felt familiar, like a routine they'd practiced for years instead of days. See you at the play, Gabrielle said. And maybe before that? Destiny asked hopefully. Julian looked at Renee, who smiled and nodded. I'm free for dinner Wednesday night if you all are. The girls cheered. Renee walked him to his car. Thank you for today, she said. You made my daughters happy. That's not a small thing. They made me happy too. And so did you. Julian drove home feeling lighter than he had in years. His house didn't seem quite so empty that night. And when he went to bed, he didn't dream of Melissa and what he'd lost. He dreamed of 3 little girls and their beautiful mother and what he might be lucky enough to find. The school play was wonderful in the way only children's productions can be. The sets wobbled, half the kids forgot their lines, and Simba's mane fell off during, I just can't wait to be king. But Gabrielle's Nala was fierce and proud, Brianna's painted backdrops were genuinely impressive, and Destiny's animal sounds were so realistic they startled the audience. Julian sat next to Renee in the 4th row, watching with the kind of pride usually reserved for actual parents. When the show ended, he stood and clapped until his palms hurt. The girls ran to them after, still in costume, faces glowing with achievement. They hugged Renee first, then Julian, chattering about missed cues and funny moments. Other parents noticed. Julian saw the curious looks, the whispered questions. He didn't mind. Anthony didn't show up. The girls had expected it, but Julian saw the way they looked toward the door during curtain call, just in case. The disappointment was brief but sharp. Over the next 3 weeks, Julian became part of their routine. Wednesday dinners, Saturday afternoons, occasionally picking the girls up from school when Renee had a client meeting. He attended Gabrielle's science fair, where she won 2nd place for a project on renewable energy. He bought art supplies for Brianna and spent an entire Sunday teaching her basic animation techniques on his tablet. He went with Destiny to the animal shelter and adopted Biscuit, the 3-legged dog, for his estate. The girls started calling him Jules instead of Mr. Julian. Then one Saturday, Destiny called him Daddy Jules without thinking, and the whole room went still. Sorry, Destiny whispered. Is that okay? Julian knelt down to her level. It's more than okay. It's an honor. Renee had tears in her eyes. That night, after the girls went to bed, she and Julian sat on the porch swing again. This is getting complicated, Renee said. In a good way or a bad way? Julian asked. I don't know yet. The girls are attached to you. I'm attached to you. But Anthony is still their father. And you and I haven't defined what we are to each other. What do you want us to be? Renee turned to face him. I want to be honest. I have feelings for you. Real feelings. But I'm scared. My last relationship ended because Anthony chose his career over his family. What if you do the same? What if your business becomes more important than us? Julian took her hand. I built my company to honor Melissa, to use technology to save lives she couldn't save. That's meaningful work. But it's not my whole life anymore. You and the girls have reminded me that meaning also comes from being present. From showing up. From loving people who love you back. Those are pretty words, Renee said softly. They're true words. Renee, I'm falling for you. For your strength and your intelligence and the way you love your daughters so fiercely. I'm falling for the family you've built and the space you're making for me in it. If you'll have me, I'd like to see where this goes. Renee leaned in and kissed him. It was gentle at first, questioning, then deeper as Julian pulled her closer. When they broke apart, both were smiling. We should probably make this official before the gala, Renee said. Unless you want society reporters speculating wildly. The gala. Julian's company fundraiser was 2 weeks away. Renee had transformed it from a boring corporate obligation into an event people were actually excited about. She'd chosen a modern art museum as the venue, designed a color scheme of deep blues and silvers, arranged for a live orchestra and a silent auction with items that would make donors competitive. Actually, Julian said, I was hoping you'd agree to go as my girlfriend, not just my event coordinator. The girls too, if they're comfortable with it. Renee bit her lip. Anthony will hear about it. Social media, gossip columns. He's going to have opinions. Let him. He had 7 years to be the kind of father those girls deserve. He chose not to be. I'm choosing differently. 3 days later, Anthony called. Renee put him on speaker so Julian could hear. I'm getting messages about you and some tech billionaire, Anthony said without preamble. People are talking. My mother saw photos of him with the girls at the science fair. His name is Julian Hayes, Renee said calmly. And yes, he's been spending time with us. You're using a rich man to make me look bad, Anthony accused. I'm dating a good man who treats my daughters like they matter, Renee corrected. If that makes you look bad, that's on you, not me. I want to see the girls this weekend. You've canceled the last 4 visits, Anthony. Why should I believe you'll show up this time? Because I'm their father. Then act like it, Renee said, her voice hard. Show up. Be present. Pay attention. Do the work. Or accept that someone else is willing to do what you won't. Anthony hung up. Julian pulled Renee into his arms. You okay? I'm angry, she admitted. Angry that he only cares when another man is involved. Angry that the girls have to compete for his attention. Angry that I believed him when he said he'd be a good father. You're allowed to be angry. I'm also scared. What if he decides to fight for custody? He's a lawyer. He has resources. He could make this complicated. Then I'll hire better lawyers, Julian said. And we'll fight. Together. Because I'm not going anywhere, Renee. Not unless you ask me to leave. She kissed him again, fierce and desperate. Don't leave. Please don't leave. Never, Julian promised. The night of the gala arrived. Julian sent a car for Renee and the girls. When they arrived at his estate to get ready, he had surprises waiting. For the triplets, matching red dresses with full skirts and sparkles, custom made by a designer Renee admired. Red shoes with small heels that made them feel grown up. Delicate silver necklaces with pendants in the shape of their initials. For Renee, a stunning blue gown that flowed like water and made her skin glow. Diamond earrings that had belonged to Melissa, offered with permission from Melissa's parents. Professional hair and makeup artists to pamper her. Julian, this is too much, Renee protested weakly even as the girls twirled in their dresses. It's not enough, Julian said. He wore a custom maroon suit that complemented their outfits perfectly. Tonight the world gets to see my family. I want us to look like the unit we're becoming. At the gala they made an entrance. 500 guests turned to watch as Julian walked in with Renee on his arm and 3 beautiful girls in red flanking them. Camera flashes went off. People whispered. Julian's business partner, Todd Richardson, approached with raised eyebrows. You've been holding out on us, Hayes? When did you acquire a ready-made family? About a month ago, Julian said easily. Renee Thompson, this is Todd Richardson, my partner in crime and occasional pain in my neck. Todd laughed and shook Renee's hand. The woman who turned our boring gala into the event of the season. Thank you. Our attendance is up 30% this year. Good planning and the right venue, Renee said professionally. And a host worth celebrating. The girls were well behaved but curious, taking in the elaborate decorations, the ice sculptures, the chocolate fountain. Julian introduced them to everyone as if they were his own daughters. Gabrielle, Brianna, Destiny. He knew their favorite subjects and hobbies and dreams. He spoke about them with genuine pride. Halfway through the evening, Julian saw Anthony Mitchell enter the ballroom. He hadn't been invited, but he'd clearly called in a favor to get past security. Yvette was with him, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent but somehow looked cheap. Anthony made a direct line for their group. Renee stiffened, but Julian squeezed her hand. "Girls," Anthony said, forcing a smile. "You look beautiful. I didn't know you'd be here." "Daddy Jules invited us," Destiny said. "He said we're his family now." Anthony's jaw tightened. His eyes locked on Julian. "That's an interesting claim, given that they already have a father." "One who shows up," Julian said mildly, "makes all the difference. I don't know what game you're playing, Hayes, but these are my children." "Then start acting like a father instead of a sperm donor," Renee said, her voice low but fierce. "You've seen them once in the last 6 weeks." "What?" Julian has been to 3 school events, 2 doctor's appointments, and every single dinner he promised to attend. He knows their teachers' names and their friends' names and what they're afraid of in the dark. "Can you say the same?" Anthony looked at his daughters, and for a moment, Julian saw something like shame cross his face. But pride won out. "This isn't over." "Actually it is," Gabrielle said quietly. All 3 girls had linked hands, presenting a united front. "You don't want to be our dad." "Not really. You just don't want someone else to be. But that's not fair. We deserve someone who chooses us every day. Jules chooses us." Other guests had noticed the confrontation. A reporter from the society pages was taking notes. Anthony realized he was creating a scene and backed down. "We'll discuss this in court if necessary," he said to Renee. "Bring it," Renee said. "My lawyer will be ready." Anthony left, dragging Yvette behind him. The girls looked shaken but resolute. Julian knelt down to their level. "You 3 were incredibly brave just now." "We meant what we said," Brianna told him. "You're more our dad than he is." Julian felt his throat tighten. "That means everything to me. More than you know." The rest of the gala passed in a blur. Speeches were made, donations collected. Julian's company raised $3 million for medical research. But the real success, the moment Julian would remember years later, was the slow dance with Renee while the girls watched from their table, smiling like they'd planned this all along. Because in a way they had. 3 little matchmakers with a whispered conspiracy and enough hope to believe in second chances. What happens when a father who ignored his children suddenly wants them back? When does love become a choice instead of an obligation? Drop a comment below with your predictions about the custody battle, and subscribe to see how this family fights for the love they deserve. The morning after the gala, Julian's phone rang at 6 a.m. His publicity team was in crisis mode. Photos from the event had gone viral. Not just in business circles but everywhere. Society pages, social media, even a few national news sites. The headlines varied: Billionaire tech CEO debuts new family, Hayes Medical Technologies founder finds love again, the sweetest second chance, CEO and event coordinators blended family. Some were kind. Many were speculative. A few were cruel, questioning Renee's motives or implying she was a gold digger. Julian called Renee immediately. "Have you seen the news?" "My phone won't stop buzzing," Renee said. She sounded tired. "My clients are calling with congratulations. My mother wants to know why she had to learn about my relationship from Facebook. And my lawyer just sent me a message saying Anthony filed for emergency custody modification." Julian's blood ran cold. "When?" "This morning. First thing. The hearing is in 2 weeks. I'm calling my legal team right now." "Julian, this is my fight. You don't have to." "We're past that," Julian interrupted gently. "What affects you affects the girls. What affects the girls affects me. I'm in this, Renee. Completely. Let me help." He heard her exhale shakily. "Okay. Thank you." Within an hour, Julian had assembled a team. The best family law attorneys in the state, private investigators to document Anthony's parenting history, character witnesses who could speak to Julian's relationship with the girls. That afternoon, Renee's best friend, Candace Brooks, stopped by Julian's office. He'd never met her, but he recognized her from photos in Renee's house. She was a tall African-American woman with an impressive afro and a skeptical expression. "Mr. Hayes," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk without invitation. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "Renee is my best friend. Has been since college. I was her maid of honor when she married Anthony. I held her while she cried through the divorce. I've watched her build a life for those girls out of nothing but determination and love. So before you go any further with this, I need to know your intentions." Julian appreciated the directness. "I intend to support Renee and her daughters in any way they need. Emotionally, financially, practically. I'm falling in love with all 4 of them, and I plan to prove I'm worthy of that privilege." Candace studied him. "You know people are calling her a gold digger, right?" saying she targeted you because you're rich. People are wrong. Renee didn't target me. Her daughters approached me at a wedding, desperate for a father figure who would show up. I said yes because I was lonely and they were brave. Everything that happened after grew naturally from that moment. And when the newness wears off, when you remember you're a billionaire with a company to run and a social circle that doesn't include a single mother and her kids, what then? Julian leaned forward. I've spent 3 years in that social circle. It's empty. Meaningless. I'd rather have one dinner with Renee and the girls than 1,000 galas with people who only care about my bank account. And I'm not going to change my mind. This isn't infatuation. It's the first real thing I've felt since my wife died. Candace's expression softened slightly. Renee said you were sincere. I wanted to see for myself. And I believe you. But belief doesn't mean trust. You want my trust? Earn it. Show up for the hard parts. Don't just be there for school plays and fancy parties. Be there at 2 a.m. when one of the girls has a nightmare. Be there when Renee is stressed and snapping at everyone. Be there when it's inconvenient and exhausting and thankless. That's when we'll know if you're real or just playing house. Fair terms, Julian said. I'll earn it. Candace stood. Good. Because if you hurt them, you'll have me to deal with. And I'm much scarier than Anthony Mitchell's lawyers. Julian smiled. I don't doubt that for a second. The legal battle began immediately. Anthony's petition claimed Renee was exposing the children to a stranger with potential ulterior motives. He argued that Julian's wealth created an unhealthy dynamic, that the girls were being spoiled and manipulated, that their mother's judgment was compromised by romantic involvement. Julian's lawyers prepared their counterarguments. They documented Anthony's canceled visits, his minimal child support contributions beyond the court-mandated amount, his lack of involvement in the girls' education and healthcare. They compiled testimonies from teachers, neighbors, and the girls' pediatrician, all stating that the triplets were thriving under Renee's care and had become noticeably happier since Julian entered their lives. But the stress took its toll on Renee. Julian saw it in the shadows under her eyes, the way she checked her phone constantly, the tightness in her shoulders that never fully released. 2 nights before the hearing, Julian found her crying in her kitchen after the girls had gone to bed. He didn't ask questions, just pulled her into his arms and held her while she shook. I'm so scared, she whispered against his chest. What if the judge believes Anthony? What if they take my girls? They won't, Julian said firmly. No judge would remove children from a loving, stable home just because their mother is dating someone. Anthony's case is weak and he knows it. This is intimidation, nothing more. But what if you're wrong? What if this whole thing with us has made everything worse for them? Julian pulled back enough to look at her face. Renee, listen to me. Your daughters are happier now than they've been in years. You've told me that. Their teachers have confirmed it. Even your parents have noticed. That happiness is worth fighting for. And we're going to win because the truth is on our side. The truth doesn't always matter in court. It does when you have the best lawyers money can buy. And character witnesses who genuinely care. And a partner who will stand beside you no matter what happens. Renee wiped her eyes. I don't deserve you. You deserve everything good in this world, Julian said. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. That night, after Renee fell asleep on his chest on the couch, Julian made a decision. He called his head of security and his private investigator. I need everything on Anthony Mitchell, he said quietly. Financial records, phone records, social media activity, information about his relationship with Yvette. Everything. Legal information only. I won't cross lines, but I need to know what we're up against. The information came back within 48 hours. Anthony was in debt. His law practice was struggling. He'd taken out loans to maintain his lifestyle, borrowed against his future earnings. Yvette, it turned out, came from old money. Her family had connections and influence. The custody play wasn't about the girls at all. It was about looking like a family man to impress Yvette's parents. It was about appearances and access to wealth, wrapped in the language of paternal concern. Julian felt sick. These were children, not props in someone's social climbing scheme. The night before the hearing, Julian took Renee and the girls to dinner at their favorite pizza place. No fancy restaurant, no expensive wine. Just paper plates and arcade games and laughter that echoed off the walls. After the girls exhausted themselves on skee ball, they piled into a booth. Gabrielle looked serious. Daddy Jules, are they going to make us live with our dad? Julian glanced at Renee, who nodded permission for him to answer. I can't promise what the judge will decide. But I can promise that your mom and I are going to fight as hard as we can to make sure you stay where you're happy and safe. And that's here with your mom, with me when you want me around. We always want you around, Brianna said. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. Julian took a deep breath. Girls, I need to tell you something important. I love you. All three of you. And I love your mother. I know we haven't known each other very long, but some things you just know. You feel them in your bones. And I feel this. We're a family. Maybe not the traditional kind, but the real kind. The kind built on choice and showing up and caring about each other's happiness. Destiny started crying. Happy tears, she insisted, when Renee rushed to comfort her. Nobody's ever said they love us just because they wanted to before. Dad only says it when Grandma makes him. The truth of that statement broke Julian's heart. He reached across the table and took each girl's hand. I say it because it's true. And I'll keep saying it for as long as you'll let me. That night, after he'd driven them home and tucked the girls into bed with Renee, he kissed her at the front door. Tomorrow we show the judge what a real family looks like. And we win. And if we don't? Renee asked. Then we appeal. And we keep fighting. Because giving up is not an option when the people you love are at stake. Renee kissed him back, deeper this time. I love you too, she whispered. I should have said it before. I was scared. But I'm done being scared. I love you, Julian Hayes. And whatever happens tomorrow, I'm grateful you walked into our lives. Best decision I ever made, Julian said. Well, second best. The first was saying yes when 3 little girls asked me to pretend to be their father. Turns out, I wasn't pretending at all. The custody hearing lasted 4 hours. Anthony's lawyer painted Julian as a wealthy interloper trying to buy his way into a family. He suggested Renee was more interested in financial security than her children's well-being. He implied the girls had been coached to reject their biological father. Renee's lawyer dismantled every argument methodically. She presented attendance records showing Anthony's minimal involvement. She called the girls' teacher, who testified that the triplets had struggled with abandonment issues before Julian appeared and had flourished. Since she brought in Renee's parents, who spoke about their daughter's dedication and Julian's genuine care for the family. Then she called Julian to the stand. Mr. Hayes, how did you meet Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny Thompson? Julian told the truth. The whole truth. How the girls approached him at a wedding with a plan to make their father jealous. How he'd agreed because he was lonely and they were brave. How what started as pretend became the most real thing in his life. And you understand these children already have a father? I understand they have a biological father who fails to show up for them repeatedly, Julian said. I'm not trying to replace Anthony Mitchell. I'm trying to be present in a way he refuses to be. The girls call me Daddy Jules because I've earned that title through consistent care and attention. Mr. Mitchell had 7 years to earn it and chose not to. Anthony's lawyer tried to shake him. Isn't it true you're worth over $3 billion, Mr. Hayes? And that Renee Thompson's event planning business was struggling before she met you? Her business was not struggling, Julian corrected. It was growing steadily. What I offered was connections to expand that growth. Connections I would have offered any talented professional in her field. And the expensive gifts? The designer dresses for the children? The jewelry for their mother? That's not attempting to buy their affection. Those were gifts given out of love, not manipulation. I have resources and I choose to share them with people I care about. Is that somehow wrong? The lawyer had no answer. When it was the girl's turn, the judge spoke to them privately in chambers. 30 minutes later, she emerged with a decision. Mr. Mitchell, your petition for modified custody is denied. The evidence shows your involvement with your daughters has been minimal and inconsistent. The presence of Mr. Hayes in their lives has been beneficial, not harmful. These children are thriving in their current environment. She turned to Anthony directly. If you want a relationship with your daughters, I suggest you start acting like a father. Showing up. Being present. Caring about their lives beyond what suits your schedule. This court will not remove children from a loving home simply because their mother has found a partner who treats them well. Case dismissed. Relief flooded through Julian. Renee grabbed his hand, squeezing hard enough to hurt. The girls who'd been waiting outside with Candace ran to them when they emerged. We get to stay together? Gabrielle asked. You get to stay together, Julian confirmed. Anthony left the courthouse without speaking to anyone. Yvette looked furious, already on her phone. Julian didn't care. The only opinions that mattered were in his arms right now, celebrating. That evening, Julian took them all to his estate. He'd had his staff prepare a celebration dinner, complete with the girls' favorite foods and a cake that said, "Our Family" in blue frosting. Over dessert, Julian made an announcement. "I've been thinking about something for a while now. My company gala was successful largely because Renee transformed it into something special. I'd like to offer you a formal position if you're interested. Director of Corporate Events for Hayes Medical Technologies." Renee's eyes widened. "Julian, I can't just. Let me finish," he said gently. "The position comes with a competitive salary, full benefits, a team to support you, and flexible hours so you can still manage your own client list. It's not charity. It's recognizing talent and offering an opportunity. But if you'd rather keep your business independent, I understand completely. The offer stands either way." Renee looked at Candace, who joined them for dinner. Her friend nodded encouragingly. "Girl, take the job. You'd be amazing at it." "I need to think about it," Renee said. "Can I have a few days?" "Take all the time you need," Julian said. 3 days later, Renee accepted. She didn't give up her business entirely but scaled back to a few select clients per year. The corporate position gave her stability, benefits for the girls, and the chance to work on major events with resources she'd never had before. Working together deepened their relationship. They fell into comfortable rhythms, balancing professional collaboration with personal connection. Julian learned how Renee thought through problems, how she turned obstacles into opportunities. Renee saw Julian's business acumen and genuine care for his employees. The girls adjusted quickly. They started calling Julian's estate, "our other house." Professor Whiskers and Biscuit became best friends. The triplets had their own rooms at the mansion, decorated to their specifications. Gabrielle's was full of science posters and a telescope. Brianna's featured her artwork on every wall. Destiny's had an entire corner dedicated to stuffed animals and animal fact books. 6 weeks after the custody hearing, Renee's parents invited them all to Sunday dinner. Margaret and Bernard Thompson had been cautiously supportive at first, worried their daughter was moving too fast. But watching Julian with the girls had worn down their resistance. Over pot roast and potatoes, Bernard pulled Julian aside. "I need to ask you something man to man." "Of course, sir. What are your intentions with my daughter and granddaughters?" Julian appreciated the directness. He'd been wondering when this conversation would happen. "I intend to marry Renee if she'll have me. And I intend to formally adopt the girls if they and Renee agree. I want to build a life with them. A real, permanent, committed life." Bernard studied him. "You've known each other less than 3 months." "I know. And I'm not going to rush Renee into anything. But when you know, you know. I knew I loved Melissa after 2 weeks. We waited a year to get engaged because it was the sensible thing to do. But I knew from the beginning. It's the same with Renee and the girls. I've known since that first dance at the wedding. My daughter has been hurt before. Deeply. I won't stand by and watch it happen again." "I won't hurt her," Julian said firmly. "I know what it's like to lose someone you love. I wouldn't survive doing that to someone else, especially not Renee. She and those girls are my second chance. I'm going to treasure that for the rest of my life." Bernard nodded slowly. "All right then. You have my blessing. But I'm watching you." "I'd expect nothing less, sir." That night, Julian and Renee took a walk in his garden while the girls played with their grandparents inside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. "Your father grilled me today," Julian said. "I know. I heard." He has a loud whisper. Renee smiled. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That I love you. That I want to marry you. That I'm all in with this family we're building." Renee stopped walking. "Julian." "I'm not proposing tonight," he said quickly. "I know it's too soon. I just wanted you to know where my head is, where my heart is. So there's no confusion about my commitment." Renee reached up and cupped his face. "I love you too. And I want all those things. But I need to be sure the girls are ready. That we're all ready. My first marriage rushed into things and fell apart. I won't make that mistake again." "Take all the time you need," Julian said. "I'll be here." They sealed the promise with a kiss, and in that moment, Julian felt complete in a way he hadn't since Melissa died. Different but equally powerful. The love he'd had with his late wife would always be part of him. But this love, this family, was his future. Inside, Destiny called out the window. "Mama, Daddy Jules, Grandma made cookies." "Daddy Jules?" Julian repeated softly. "I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing that." "Good," Renee said, taking his hand. "Because they're not going to stop saying it. Ever." They walked back to the house together, and through the windows, Julian could see the life he'd built. Not perfect but real. Not simple but worth every complication. 3 little girls. 1 remarkable woman. A second chance at happiness. And the courage to believe that love, when chosen daily, could heal even the deepest wounds. The next 3 months were the happiest of Julian's life since losing Melissa. He and Renee fell into a rhythm that felt both new and ancient, like they'd been doing this forever. Mornings started with coffee on his terrace or breakfast in her kitchen, depending on whose house they'd stayed at. Evenings ended with bedtime stories for the girls or quiet conversations after they'd fallen asleep. Julian officially moved Biscuit to the estate permanently and hired a trainer to help the 3-legged dog adjust to his new life of luxury. The girls visited every weekend and slowly, their belongings accumulated in their rooms. Clothes, books, art supplies. Evidence of a life being lived, not just visited. Renee's business flourished. She coordinated 2 major hospital fundraisers and a tech conference that received national attention. Her reputation grew beyond the local market. Clients started flying her to other cities for consultations. Julian supported every step, offering connections but letting her shine on her own merit. He attended her events as her partner, not her benefactor, proud to watch her command a room with nothing but competence and charm. The girls thrived in school. Gabrielle joined the science club and started talking about becoming an aerospace engineer. Brianna's art teacher recommended her for a special summer program at the local museum. Destiny expanded her animal shelter volunteering to include a youth education program about pet adoption. Life was good. Better than good. Julian started looking at engagement rings not to buy yet, but to understand what Renee might like. He talked to her parents about his intentions. He had his lawyer draft adoption papers, ready for when the time was right. Then Anthony Mitchell returned. The first sign was a message from Renee's lawyer. Anthony was requesting a formal visitation schedule after months of sporadic contact. He wanted every other weekend, holiday alternation, the works. He'd hired a new attorney, someone expensive and aggressive. The second sign was a series of articles in business and society publications. Local attorney fights for his daughters. Father denied access by mother's wealthy boyfriend. Anthony Mitchell's battle against parental alienation. The articles painted Julian as a controlling billionaire who'd manipulated a vulnerable single mother into cutting her ex-husband out of their children's lives. They portrayed Anthony as a dedicated father fighting against impossible odds. None of it was true. All of it was damaging. Julian's publicity team went into crisis mode again. They prepared counterstatements, gathered evidence of Anthony's minimal involvement, compiled the girls' own testimonies. But the damage was done. Public opinion started shifting. Renee was devastated. People actually believe this, she said, scrolling through comments on one of the articles. They think I'm using you to hurt Anthony. They think I'm a bad mother. People who don't know you, Julian reminded her. People who only see headlines, not truth. The people who matter know better. But the attacks intensified. Someone leaked details about Julian's relationship with the girls, twisting the wedding reception encounter into something sinister. Anonymous sources claimed Julian had targeted Renee specifically because of her vulnerable position. Then Yvette gave an interview. She appeared on a local morning show, perfectly styled, tears ready on command. Anthony just wants to be a father to his daughters, she said, dabbing at her eyes. But every time he tries, Renee shuts him down. She's turned those girls against him. And now she has this billionaire funding her legal battles, making it impossible for a regular person to fight back. The host, clearly sympathetic, asked about the engagement rumors. We're engaged, yes, Yvette confirmed, holding up a massive diamond ring. Anthony proposed last month. He wants us to be a real family, him and me and his daughters. But Renee won't even let us try. Renee threw a pillow at the TV. She's lying. Anthony doesn't want a family. He wants to look like he has a family. There's a difference. Julian pulled her close. We know the truth. The judge knows the truth. Let them play their games. It won't change the outcome. But the pressure mounted. The girls' school called, concerned about increased media attention. Other parents whispered and pointed. Gabrielle came home crying because a classmate said her mom was a gold digger. Julian hired security for Renee and the girls. Not aggressive, but present. He wanted them safe, not scared. But the security detail itself became fodder for more articles. Hayes Shields' new family from biological father. 3 weeks into the media storm, Anthony finally showed up at Renee's house unannounced. Julian was there helping Brianna with a school project. Security called his arrival in immediately. Renee met Anthony on the porch with Julian standing behind her. The girls watched from the window, uncertain. I want to see my daughters, Anthony said. He looked tired, stressed. Different from his usual polished appearance. You want to see them or you want to be seen with them? Renee asked. Don't do this, Renee. Don't make me the villain because you found someone new. I'm not making you anything. You did this yourself. You had years to be their father. You chose not to be. Now you only show up because it serves your purpose. Anthony's jaw tightened. Yvette's family wants to meet the girls. Her father is a partner at a major firm. He could help my career. But he needs to see I'm a family man. That I can balance work and personal life. The honesty was stunning. Julian almost admired it. At least Anthony had stopped pretending his motives were pure. Renee laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want me to produce your daughters like props for a business deal? So your fiancé's rich father will give you a job? That's what this is about. It's about providing for my children, Anthony argued. A better position means more money for child support, better opportunities. They don't need more money. They need a father who shows up without an agenda. Can you offer that? Anthony looked toward the window where the girls watched. For a moment, Julian saw genuine conflict in his eyes. Maybe some part of him wanted to be better. But want wasn't enough without action. I filed for joint custody, Anthony said finally. My lawyer says we have a good case. The court will see I'm trying. That I'm getting married, building a stable home. They'll see you're keeping me from my kids out of spite. We'll see you in court then, Renee said. And this time the girls are old enough to testify fully about what they want. Are you prepared to hear them choose someone else? Anthony flinched. They're children. They don't know what's best for them. They know who makes them feel safe and loved, Julian said, speaking for the first time. They know who shows up to their school events and learns their friends' names and asks about their days. If you're not prepared to be that person consistently, you're going to lose this fight. Stay out of this, Anthony snapped. You're not their father. Neither are you, Julian replied calmly. Not in any way that matters. A father is more than DNA. It's showing up, being present, putting their needs above your own. You had a chance to be that. You chose your career instead. I'm not going to apologize for choosing differently. Anthony looked at Renee one more time. I'll see you in court. And when I win, when the girls are with me every other weekend, we'll see how long your billionaire sticks around. He left, tires screeching as he pulled away. Renee sagged against Julian and he held her up. Inside, the girls were crying. All three of them clustered together on the couch. Renee rushed to them and Julian followed. We don't want to go with him, Gabrielle said through tears. Can they make us? No one's making you do anything, Renee promised. The judge will listen to what you want. And what you want matters. We want to stay with you and Daddy Jules, Destiny said. We want to be a family. A real family. Julian sat down and the girls immediately climbed onto his lap, all three of them trying to fit like they used to when they were smaller. He held them as best he could. Listen to me, he said gently. Your father is fighting for custody because he's scared and making bad choices. But you're safe. Your mom and I are going to protect you. And no matter what happens in court, you'll never be somewhere you don't want to be. I promise. You can't promise that, Brianna whispered. Adults always say things they can't control. The wisdom broke Julian's heart. You're right. I can't control what the judge decides. But I can promise I'll fight. I can promise I'll use every resource I have. I can promise I won't give up. Ever. Because I love you three more than I thought possible to love anyone. You're my daughters in every way that matters. And I protect what's mine. The girls held him tighter. Renee watched with tears streaming down her face, and Julian reached out one hand to her. She took it, joining their huddle, 5 people holding each other against the storm. That night, after the girls finally fell asleep in a fort they'd built in the living room, Julian and Renee sat on the porch. I'm scared, Renee admitted. Anthony has money now. Yvette's family has connections. What if they find a judge who thinks biological fathers deserve more chances? What if they convince someone I'm unfit? Then we appeal. And we keep fighting. Julian took both her hands. Renee, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Would this be easier without me? If I stepped back, let you handle it alone, would Anthony back down? Renee's eyes widened. Is that what you want? To step back? God, no. But I need to know I'm not making things harder for you and the girls. If my presence is the problem. Your presence is the solution, Renee interrupted fiercely. You're the reason the girls are happy again. You're the reason I remember what partnership feels like. Anthony is using you as an excuse, but he'd find another excuse if you weren't here. This is about him wanting to look good for Yvette's family, not about being a real father. Don't you dare think of leaving us. Julian pulled her into his arms. I'm not going anywhere. I just needed to hear you say it. They sat in silence for a while, holding each other, gathering strength for the fight ahead. Above them, stars emerged one by one, pinpricks of light against the darkness. I want to marry you, Julian said suddenly. Not now. Not until this is over and the girls feel secure. But I want you to know that's where this is headed. You and me and them. Forever. Renee pulled back to look at his face. That's where I wanted to go too. Good. Then let's win this custody battle and get on with our lives. The custody hearing was scheduled for 4 weeks out. They had a month to prepare, to gather evidence, to steel themselves for whatever came next. A month to prove that love chosen daily mattered more than biology alone. And Julian was ready to prove it no matter what it cost. The second custody hearing was scheduled in the family court downtown. Julian arrived with Renee and the girls, surrounded by their legal team. The courthouse was already crowded with reporters, photographers, curious onlookers drawn by the media coverage. Security escorted them through a side entrance to avoid the cameras. Inside, the building was all marble and echo, cold and impersonal. The girls held tight to Renee's hands, wearing matching blue dresses she'd chosen specifically because blue was calming. Anthony and Yvette sat on the opposite side of the hallway with their lawyer, a shark-faced woman named Patricia Henley who'd built her reputation on winning unwinnable cases. Yvette wore a conservative dress and minimal makeup, playing the role of concerned stepmother-to-be. The bailiff called them into the courtroom. Judge Sandra Martinez presided, a middle-aged Latina woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. She'd reviewed all the documents, all the evidence from both sides. Anthony's lawyer went first. She painted a picture of a devoted father denied access to his children by a vindictive ex-wife and her wealthy boyfriend. She presented photographs of Anthony at past events with the girls, carefully selected moments that showed him present and engaged. Mr. Mitchell has consistently tried to maintain a relationship with his daughters, Henley argued. But every attempt has been blocked or discouraged by their mother. Since Julian Hayes entered the picture, access has become even more restricted. The girls have been coached to reject their father in favor of a man who's essentially bought his way into their affections. Renee's lawyer, Patricia Morgan, a black woman in her 50s with a stellar track record, countered with documentation. Cancelled visits going back 2 years. Child support payments that were technically on time but never exceeded the court-mandated minimum. School records showing Anthony had never attended a parent-teacher conference, a science fair, an art show. Mr. Mitchell claims to want a relationship with his daughters, Morgan said. But the evidence shows minimal effort prior to Julian Hayes' involvement. The sudden interest in joint custody coincides suspiciously with his engagement to a woman whose family requires evidence of stable family life. Henley objected. Speculation about Mr. Mitchell's motivations is irrelevant. What matters is his current desire to be a present father. His current desire appears tied to impressing his future in-laws, Morgan shot back. We have testimony from multiple sources indicating Mr. Mitchell's interest increased dramatically after his engagement was announced. The judge allowed both arguments but warned about speculation. Then she called witnesses. Anthony's mother testified first. She described her son as a caring father overwhelmed by work demands. She claimed Renee had always made visitation difficult, scheduling activities that conflicted with Anthony's availability. My son loves those girls, she said. He's just been going through a hard time financially and professionally. He's trying to build a better life for them. On cross-examination, Morgan asked, Mrs. Mitchell, when was the last time your son visited his daughters without being prompted by you or the court? She hesitated. I don't keep exact dates. According to Miss Thompson's calendar, your son has initiated contact exactly 3 times in the last 6 months. Does that sound like a father fighting for access? He's busy, she defended weakly. So is Miss Thompson. Yet she manages to be present for her children daily. Why can't your son do the same? No answer. Then came character witnesses for Anthony. Colleagues who described him as hardworking and dedicated. Friends who'd seen him with the girls at his mother's house, playing and laughing. It was all surface-level testimony, nothing that addressed consistent presence or actual parenting. Renee's side brought in teachers, the girls' pediatrician, neighbors who'd watched the triplets grow up. They all told the same story, a mother who sacrificed everything for her daughters and a father who showed up when convenient. Then Morgan called Julian to the stand. Mr. Hayes, describe how you met Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny Thompson. Julian told the story again, every detail. The wedding reception. The girl's whispered plan. His agreement to help. How that temporary arrangement had become the most important relationship of his life. And what role do you play in the girls' daily lives now? I'm their second parent in every practical sense. I help with homework. I attend school functions. I know their teachers, their friends, their fears and dreams. I've been to their doctor appointments, their dance recitals, their art shows. I'm present, consistently and intentionally. Do you believe you're trying to replace their biological father? No. I'm filling a void their biological father refuses to fill. There's a difference. If Anthony Mitchell showed up tomorrow and committed to being a real father, I'd support that. But he's shown no indication of wanting that responsibility. He wants the appearance without the work. Henley stood. Objection. Speculation about Mr. Mitchell's intentions. Sustained, Judge Martinez said. Stick to observable facts, Mr. Hayes. Julian nodded. The observable fact is that I've been present for more of the girls' important moments in 3 months than their father has been in the last year. That's not speculation. It's documented reality. The questioning continued for an hour. Henley tried to trip him up, suggest his motives were controlling or possessive. But Julian remained calm, answering each question with facts and genuine emotion. Finally, it was time for the girls to testify. Judge Martinez called them into chambers, one at a time. Renee wanted to be present, but the judge explained that private testimony from children their age was standard in custody cases. Gabrielle went first. She was gone for 20 minutes. When she came out, her eyes were red but determined. Brianna next, then Destiny. Each girl spent time alone with the judge, and Julian could only imagine what they were saying. The wait was excruciating. Julian held Renee's hand, feeling her tremble. This was it. The girls' own voices would carry the most weight. Everything depended on them being brave enough to tell the truth. When all 3 girls had finished, Judge Martinez called everyone back into the courtroom. She looked serious, thoughtful, like someone who'd heard something that required careful consideration. I've reviewed all the evidence and heard from all witnesses, she began. This is a complex case involving questions of parental rights, children's well-being, and what constitutes true parenting versus biological connection. She looked at Anthony. Mr. Mitchell, the evidence shows you've been a minimal presence in your daughter's lives for the past 2 years. While you pay child support as required, you rarely exercise your visitation rights and have shown little initiative in maintaining a relationship with your children. Anthony started to speak, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm. However, the judge continued, I also recognize that people can change. That sometimes it takes a wake-up call to realize what matters. Your sudden interest in joint custody could be genuine, even if the timing is suspicious. Renee's hand tightened on Julian's. That said, I must consider the best interests of the children. And in this case, those interests are clear. Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny are thriving in their current environment. They have stability, consistent care, and adults in their lives who prioritize their needs. Disrupting that for a custody arrangement that serves the father's needs more than the children's would be harmful. Relief started to flood through Julian, but he held his breath until the final ruling. Mr. Mitchell, your petition for joint custody is denied. However, I'm modifying the existing custody arrangement to include mandatory visitation every other Sunday from 2 to 6 p.m. If you miss 3 consecutive visits without documented emergency, visitation will be reduced to supervised visits only. This gives you an opportunity to build a real relationship with your daughters, but it requires actual effort on your part. Anthony's face went red with anger, but his lawyer kept him silent. Judge Martinez turned to Renee. Miss Thompson, while I understand your protective instincts, you must support this visitation schedule. No scheduling conflicts, no last-minute cancellations unless genuinely necessary. Your daughters deserve the chance to know their father, even if he's been absent before. I understand, Your Honor, Renee said. As for Mr. Hayes's role, the judge said, looking directly at Julian, I find no evidence of manipulation or improper influence. The girls' testimonies were clear and consistent. They feel loved and secure in your presence. They've chosen to call you a paternal figure because you've earned that through consistent action. That's not something the court should or will interfere with. She closed her folder. This case is about children who needed stability and found it. Mr. Mitchell, if you truly love your daughters, prove it through consistent presence, not court battles. Case dismissed. The gavel came down. Renee burst into tears. The girls ran from their seats in the gallery and threw themselves at Julian and Renee. The legal team smiled, gathering their materials. Across the aisle, Anthony sat in stunned silence while Yvette looked furious. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Julian's security cleared a path, but Morgan stopped to make a statement. Today's ruling confirms what we've known all along. The Thompson family is thriving, and no amount of media manipulation or legal maneuvering can change that. We hope Mr. Mitchell will use this opportunity to build a genuine relationship with his daughters, but if not, they're surrounded by people who love them unconditionally. In the car on the way back to Julian's estate, the girls were giddy with relief. They sang off-key to the radio and made plans for a celebration dinner. Renee sat quietly, leaning against Julian's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For fighting. For staying. For loving us enough to go through all this." Julian kissed the top of her head. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." That evening, after a celebration with Renee's parents and Candace, after the girls had fallen asleep exhausted from emotion and excitement, Julian found Renee on his terrace overlooking the city. He'd been carrying a ring box in his pocket for weeks, waiting for the right moment. This wasn't it, not yet. They all needed time to decompress from the stress of the custody battle. But soon. Very soon. "What are you thinking about?" Renee asked, noticing his distant expression. "The future," Julian said. "Our future. All 5 of us." Renee smiled. "It's a good future." "The best," Julian agreed. "And it's just beginning." 3 months after the custody hearing, life settled into a beautiful routine. Anthony showed up for his Sunday visits exactly once before canceling the rest. After 3 consecutive missed visits, the court reduced his rights to supervised visitation only. He didn't fight it. Apparently, Yvette's father had given him the job without requiring proof of family stability, and Anthony's motivation evaporated. The girls stopped asking about him. They'd accepted that their biological father wasn't capable of being the father they needed. It hurt, Julian could see it sometimes in quiet moments, but they had him now. And he was all in. On a Saturday morning in late September, Julian took the girls to breakfast while Renee met with a client. Over pancakes and orange juice, he cleared his throat. "Girls, I need to talk to you about something important." 3 pairs of eyes looked at him with interest. At 8 years old now, they were perceptive enough to sense when something big was coming. "I love your mother very much," Julian began. "And I love the 3 of you more than I thought possible to love anyone. You've become my family in every way that matters." "We know," Gabrielle said. "You tell us all the time." Julian smiled. "Good. Because I want to make it official. I want to marry your mom and formally adopt all 3 of you. But I won't do it unless you're completely comfortable with the idea. This is your decision as much as mine." The girls exchanged looks. Then Brianna spoke. "Would we have to change our last names?" "Only if you want to. You could be Thompson Hayes or keep Thompson or take Hayes completely. Whatever feels right to you." "Would you really be our dad forever?" Destiny asked. "Like legally and everything?" "Legally and emotionally and practically in every other way that matters. Forever." Gabrielle studied him seriously. "You know this means you can't leave, right? Even if things get hard. Even if we're teenagers and moody. Even if Mama gets stressed and yells. You have to stay." "I'm counting on it," Julian said. "I want all the hard parts and the good parts. The whole package. That's what family means." They were quiet for a moment. Then all 3 girls nodded. "Yes," Gabrielle said. "Ask Mama to marry you." "Make it romantic," Brianna added. "She likes romantic things but never admits it." "And can we help plan the wedding?" Destiny asked. "We have ideas." Julian laughed, relief flooding through him. "You can absolutely help plan. In fact, I'm counting on your expertise." That evening, Julian took Renee to the park where they'd first talked alone after the wedding, away from the girls and the chaos. It was the same porch swing where they'd negotiated ground rules, where they'd first admitted real feelings. They walked through the gardens as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple. Julian had arranged for the park to be closed for a private event, just the 2 of them and a string quartet playing softly in the distance. "This is beautiful," Renee said, looking around. "But why all the secrecy? The girls said you were planning a surprise." "They may have been involved in the planning," Julian admitted. "They're good at keeping secrets when properly motivated with ice cream bribes." Renee laughed. "What are you up to, Julian Hayes?" Julian led her to the center of the garden, where rose petals formed a circle on the ground. In the middle stood a small table with a single candle and 2 champagne glasses. "Renee Thompson," Julian began, taking both her hands. "6 months ago, 3 little girls approached me with a wild plan. They wanted me to pretend to be their father to make their real father jealous. I agreed because I was lonely and they were brave. But somewhere between pretending and reality, something shifted. Tears were already forming in Renee's eyes. I fell in love with those girls. With their intelligence and humor and enormous hearts. I fell in love with you. With your strength and your dedication and the way you love so fiercely it makes me brave too. You've given me a second chance at family, at happiness, at a future I thought died with Melissa. Julian knelt down, pulling the ring box from his pocket. Renee gasped, hands flying to her mouth. I asked your daughters for permission this morning. They said yes. I asked your father for his blessing last week. He said yes. Now I'm asking you. Renee Thompson, will you marry me? Will you let me be your partner, your husband, the father to your girls in every official capacity? Will you build a life with me? The ring sparkled in the candlelight, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. Blue like Renee's favorite color. Like the dress she'd worn at the gala. Like trust and loyalty and depth. Yes, Renee said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. They kissed while the string quartet played and rose petals drifted on the evening breeze. When they finally pulled apart, Renee was laughing and crying at the same time. I can't believe you kept this secret from me. How long have you been planning this? About a month. Your daughters are excellent conspirators. Speaking of which, Renee said looking around, where are they? As if on cue, Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny emerged from behind a nearby tree, led by Candace and Renee's parents. They'd been hiding, waiting for the big moment. Did she say yes? Destiny called out. She said yes, Julian confirmed. The girls ran to them and suddenly it was a group hug, all 5 of them tangled together and laughing. Renee's parents joined in, then Candace, and for a moment Julian closed his eyes and just felt it. This family. His family. The next day, wedding planning began in earnest. Renee wanted something elegant but personal, not too big, focused on the people who mattered most. They chose a date 6 months out, giving them time to plan properly without rushing. The girls threw themselves into helping. Gabrielle researched venues with the same intensity she brought to her science projects. Brianna designed sketches of potential dresses and floral arrangements. Destiny created a playlist of songs that made them all happy. Renee wanted the girls to be junior bridesmaids, standing with her at the altar. Julian wanted them to have a special role beyond that. He worked with Renee's lawyer to fast-track the adoption paperwork so he could officially become their father before the wedding. The paperwork was completed in 4 months. On a Tuesday afternoon in January, they all stood before a judge while Julian officially adopted Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny Thompson. They chose to become Thompson Hayes, keeping their mother's name while adding his. The girls cried happy tears. Renee cried too. Julian's voice shook when he recited his oath to care for them, to provide for them, to be their father in every legal and emotional capacity. When the judge congratulated them, Gabrielle hugged Julian tight. You're really our dad now. I always was, Julian said. This just makes it official. As the wedding date approached, details came together beautifully. The venue was an elegant garden estate with views of the water. The color scheme was blues and silvers with touches of green. Renee designed every aspect with her professional expertise, creating something that felt both grand and intimate. Julian's contribution was ensuring everyone important was there. He flew in colleagues who'd become friends, invited the team from his company, made sure the guest list included the teachers and neighbors and community members who'd supported Renee and the girls. 2 weeks before the wedding, an envelope arrived at Renee's house. No return address. Inside was a letter from Anthony Mitchell. Renee read it aloud to Julian that night. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. I was a terrible father and a worse husband. You deserved better. The girls deserved better. I see now that my priorities were wrong. By the time I realized what I'd lost, you'd found someone who values what I threw away. I'm not asking to be part of the wedding or your lives. I just wanted you to know I understand my failures. I hope the girls are happy. I hope you found the partnership you always wanted. You deserve every bit of joy that comes your way. Anthony, do you think he means it? Renee asked. I think he regrets his choices, Julian said. Whether that translates to actually changing, I don't know. But it doesn't matter for us. Our family is complete with or without his acknowledgement. Renee nodded. Should we tell the girls? Let them enjoy the wedding without complications. We can share this later if they ask about him. 1 week before the wedding, Melissa's parents requested to meet with Julian. He visited them at their home, nervous about what they might say. "We wanted to give you something," Mrs. Cooper said, handing him a small box. Inside was Melissa's wedding ring, the simple gold band she'd worn for their 5 years of marriage. "We know you're moving forward with your life," Mr. Cooper added. "And we're glad. Melissa loved you so much. She would want you to be happy." "She'd love Renee," Mrs. Cooper said. "And those girls. We've seen the photos you post. You're building something beautiful." Julian's eyes burned with tears. "Thank you. For understanding. For supporting this. Our daughter's love for you didn't end when she died," Mrs. Cooper said. "And your love for her doesn't end because you've found new love. Both can be true at the same time." They hugged him, these people who'd lost their daughter but hadn't lost their capacity for grace. Julian left feeling blessed by their acceptance and Melissa's memory. The rehearsal dinner was at Julian's estate, a casual affair with close family and friends. The girls performed a song they'd written about their new family, complete with dance moves and enthusiastic if slightly off-key singing. Not a dry eye in the house. Renee's father gave a toast about second chances and chosen family. Candace roasted Julian gently about needing 3 matchmakers to find love. Julian's business partner welcomed Renee and the girls to their extended work family. That night, after everyone had left, Julian stood on his terrace with Renee. Tomorrow they'd be married. Tomorrow everything would be official. "Nervous?" Renee asked. "Not even a little," Julian said. "I've never been more sure of anything." "Not even when you started your company?" "Not even then. This is different. This is choosing to build a life with people I love. That's the best kind of certainty." Renee kissed him softly. "I love you, Julian Hayes. Tomorrow and every day after. I love you too, Renee Thompson. Soon to be Renee Thompson Hayes." They stood together under the stars on the edge of their new life, ready for whatever came next. Because they'd already survived the hard parts. The rest was just celebration. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Julian woke in his estate while Renee and the girls prepared at her house. Tradition demanded they spend the night apart, though he'd hated every minute of sleeping alone. His best man, Todd Richardson, showed up at 8 a.m. with coffee and nervous energy. "Big day, Hayes. Ready to officially join the Married with Kids Club?" "Been ready for months," Julian said, accepting the coffee gratefully. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. Julian spent the morning with his groomsmen, getting ready with the kind of calm confidence that came from absolute certainty. He wore a custom maroon suit, the same shade he'd worn to that first gala. His boutonniere was a blue rose, matching Renee's favorite color. At the venue, everything looked perfect. Renee's team had outdone themselves. Blue and silver flowers everywhere, chairs arranged in a semicircle around the altar, white fabric draping from trees and creating an ethereal atmosphere. The water sparkled in the background, and a string quartet tuned their instruments. Guests arrived. Julian's colleagues from Hayes Medical Technologies. Renee's event planning clients who'd become friends. Teachers from the girls' school. Neighbors who'd watched the family form. Melissa's parents, smiling and supportive. Renee's parents, beaming with pride. At 3:45 the music started. Julian took his place at the altar with Todd beside him. His hands were steady. His heart was full. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle first, Candace looking elegant in a green dress. Then came the moment Julian had been waiting for. Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny appeared, wearing matching green dresses with silver accents. They carried small bouquets of blue roses and walked in perfect synchronization, faces solemn with the importance of their role. They took their places near the altar, and each gave Julian a small smile that said, "We did this. We brought you here." Then the music changed. The traditional wedding march began. And Renee appeared. She was stunning. Her dress was ivory silk with delicate blue embroidery along the hem and bodice. Her natural curls were styled elegantly, and she wore the diamond earrings Julian had given her, the ones that had belonged to Melissa. She carried a bouquet of blue and white roses. But what took Julian's breath away wasn't the dress or the hair or even the radiant smile. It was the way she looked at him as she walked down the aisle with her father. Like he was her future. Her choice. Her forever. Bernard Thompson placed Renee's hand in Julian's with a quiet, "Take care of my girls." "All of them," Julian promised. "Always." The officiant, a friend of Renee's family, began the ceremony with words about love and commitment and the families we choose. Then it was time for vows. Julian went first. "Renee, 6 months ago I was a man going through the motions of life without really living. Then 3 little girls with a wild plan gave me a purpose. You gave me a reason. You taught me that love isn't about replacing what you've lost. It's about having the courage to build something new. You and Gabrielle and Brianna and Destiny are my new beginning. My second chance. My chosen family. I promise to show up for you every single day. To be your partner in every way that matters. To love your daughters as my own, to honor the trust you've placed in me, and to never take for granted the gift of this family we've built together. Renee's eyes glistened with tears. Then she spoke, her voice clear and strong despite the emotion. Julian, you came into our lives when we needed you most. Not as a savior but as a partner. You saw my daughters not as responsibilities to shoulder, but as people to cherish. You saw me not as a single mother to rescue, but as a woman with dreams and strength and value. You've shown us what it means to be chosen every single day. To be prioritized. To matter. I promise to be your partner in building this life. To support your dreams while pursuing my own. To create a home where love is expressed through action, not just words. To honor the memory of those we've lost while celebrating the family we've found. You are my second chance too. And I'm going to spend every day grateful for it. They exchanged rings. Simple bands engraved with the date they met at the wedding reception, the day their story really began. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said. You may kiss your bride. Julian pulled Renee close and kissed her thoroughly while the guests cheered. When they broke apart, both were smiling through happy tears. Before you walk back down the aisle, the officiant said, the bride and groom have a surprise. Julian and Renee turned to the girls. Gabrielle, Brianna, Destiny, will you join us? The triplets came forward, confused but excited. Julian knelt down to their level while Renee stood beside them. We wanted to do something special, Julian said. To make this official not just for your mom and me but for all of us. From his pocket he pulled out 3 small velvet boxes. Each contained a delicate necklace with a pendant in the shape of a family tree. These represent our family. The 5 of us. Branches that grew together and chose to intertwine. The girls' eyes went wide. Renee helped them put on the necklaces. You 3 made this family possible, Julian continued. You were brave enough to approach a stranger and ask for help. Smart enough to see what we needed before we knew ourselves. And loving enough to take the risk. So this wedding isn't just about your mom and me. It's about all of us becoming official. Forever. We're really a family now, Gabrielle whispered. We always were, Julian said. But now everyone knows it. The ceremony ended with the 5 of them walking down the aisle together, not just bride and groom but a whole family, united and official and complete. The reception was a celebration in every sense. Dinner was delicious, music was perfect, toasts were heartfelt and often funny. Candace told stories about Renee in college. Todd shared Julian's nervous rambling the day after he met the girls. Renee's father welcomed Julian to the family with genuine warmth. Then it was the girls' turn. They stood together, Gabrielle holding the microphone. We want to tell you how Mama and Daddy Jules met, she began. The guests settled in, curious. Over the next 5 minutes, the triplets told the story. The wedding reception. Their desperate plan. Julian's surprising agreement. How what started as pretend became the most real thing in all their lives. We thought we were being smart, Brianna said. Tricking a rich man into making our dad jealous. But we were actually just finding the dad we were supposed to have all along. Daddy Jules shows up, Destiny added. He comes to our school stuff. He knows our friends. He asks about our days and actually listens to the answers. He makes Mama smile. He makes us feel safe. That's what dads are supposed to do. So thank you, all 3 said together, looking at Julian, for saying yes when we asked. For choosing us. For becoming our family. There wasn't a dry eye in the venue. Julian stood and hugged each girl, then Renee, and the whole family embraced while cameras flashed and guests applauded. The dancing started. Julian and Renee had their first dance to a song about second chances and new beginnings. Then the girls joined them and it became a family dance, all 5 of them moving together in imperfect but joyful rhythm. As the evening wore on, Julian found a quiet moment with Melissa's parents. Mrs. Cooper hugged him tight. She would be so happy for you, she said. Our daughter loved you enough to want you to find love again. This family you've built, it honors her memory. It shows that love doesn't end. It just grows and changes and makes room for more. Thank you, Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. For everything. For raising her. For supporting me. For blessing this new chapter. You blessed us by loving our daughter so well, Mr. Cooper said. Now go be happy. That's all we want for you. The reception ended with a send-off. Instead of rice or bubbles, guests released blue butterflies that fluttered into the evening sky. Renee and Julian watched them go, surrounded by their girls, by family and friends, by the life they'd chosen. They honeymooned as a family of 5. 2 weeks in Hawaii, beaches and sunshine, and absolutely no schedule beyond spending time together. The girls learned to surf. Renee finally relaxed completely. Julian felt peace settle into his bones. On their last night, sitting on the beach watching the sunset, Destiny asked, "Can it always be like this?" "The vacation part, no," Julian said honestly. "We have school and work and regular life to get back to. But the family part? The part where we're together and happy and choosing each other? That part is forever." "Good," Gabrielle said. "Because I'm not letting you go anywhere." "Me neither," Brianna agreed. "None of us are," Renee added, leaning against Julian's shoulder. They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. A family born from a whispered conspiracy and 3 little girls brave enough to believe in second chances. 1 year later, Julian found himself at another wedding. A colleague's daughter, elegant affair, familiar setting. He stood by the refreshment table with a glass of sparkling cider, watching Renee coordinate last-minute details with the kind of professional grace that never failed to impress him. A small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, mister?" Julian looked down. A boy, maybe 6 years old, with nervous eyes and fidgeting hands. "Yes." "There's a girl," the boy whispered, glancing across the room where a little girl in a pink dress was talking with her friends. "I really like her. But I don't know what to say. You look nice. Do you know how to talk to girls?" Julian felt a smile spread across his face. He knelt down to the boy's level, remembering 3 little girls who'd approached him with their own request not so long ago. "I do," Julian said. "But first, can I tell you a secret?" The boy nodded eagerly. "The best conversations start with honesty. Go tell that girl you think she's nice and ask if she wants to sit with you during dinner. Be genuine. Be kind. And remember, the worst she can say is no. But if you don't ask, you'll never know what could have been." The boy considered this seriously. Then he squared his small shoulders and marched across the ballroom with the determination of someone on a mission. Julian watched him go, then felt arms slip around his waist from behind. Renee finished with her coordination duties for the moment. "Making a new friend?" she asked. "Paying forward the kindness your daughters showed me," Julian said, turning to kiss her. "That boy needed courage. I gave him the same courage your girls gave me when they asked me to take a chance on family." Across the room, Gabrielle, Brianna, and Destiny were entertaining a group of younger kids with magic tricks Gabrielle had learned and Brianna had designed props for. They were confident, happy, thriving. Everything Julian and Renee had fought for. "We did good," Renee said softly, watching their daughters. "We did great," Julian corrected. "And we're just getting started." The little boy returned, beaming, the girl in the pink dress walking beside him. They'd found an empty table and were coloring together on the kids' activity sheets, already chatting like old friends. Julian smiled. Sometimes the best love stories start with a whispered conspiracy and 3 little matchmakers. But all love stories he'd learned require the same ingredients: courage to take a chance, kindness to show up consistently, and hope that choosing love every single day builds something worth keeping. He had all 3. And he was never letting go.